In our imagination, a world in which people travel in supersonic vehicles, travel in space, and generally live much better and longer thanks to biotechnology seems like something very far away, perhaps even unrealizable. But the future is much closer than we think, and science fiction literature may cease to be so fantastic in the near future. Let's take a look at the coolest modern technologies that can qualitatively change people's lives. And it's not about another increase in the number of cameras and pixels on your smartphone or robot vacuum cleaners, but about real breakthroughs and developments that raise a lot of questions from critics and at the same time can turn our world and push the whole of humanity to a new round of development. Have you ever wondered about the reality of teleportation and its possibilities it can provide? Imagine that in an instant, you could be on the other side of the world. This opens up a lot of prospects. First, it is capable of destroying logistics and the entire transportation system in one fell swoop, which can significantly reduce all costs associated with transportation and travel. What would our world and many of our major cities look like without highways and major roads? So far, it's hard to imagine. Secondly, it has the potential to level out the cost of real estate across the entire planet and even the entire standard of living in general. Working in Singapore, for example, you could live anywhere, even in a remote village on an island somewhere in the Indian Ocean, without spending money to rent an expensive apartment in the metropolis. There are also endless opportunities for unlimited travel and much, much more, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. On the other hand, mass unemployment is possible due to the disappearance of many businesses and service sectors, which could lead to unrest and even wars. However, fortunately for us, or maybe it's the other way around, teleportation is not yet within the grasp of modern science, if it will ever be possible at all. Scientists face a lot of technical and ethical problems. In fact, quantum teleportation does not involve moving an object from one place to another, but rather destroying the original object at point A and creating an exact copy at point B, which is totally unacceptable for teleportation of a living organism. At the moment, research is at the level of transmission of elementary particles. For example, Chinese scientists were able to send a particle of light at a distance of almost 200 kilometers, and researchers from the Netherlands were able to teleport an atom at a distance of 4 meters. I think teleporting people is still a long way off, so for now, we should focus on the more realistic prospects of high-speed transport. Hyperloop. Engineers from Hyperloop are actively engaged in fast transportation technologies. Back in 2012, the idea of a transportation system consisting of pipes inside which sealed capsules with speeds of up to 1,200 kilometers an hour can travel was suggested by Elon Musk, which led to the creation of the company. At the moment, the technology is developing according to the open source model, i.e., the company's original developments are in the public domain, which gives engineers and developers from all over the world the opportunity to develop the technology in their own way. The company periodically announces tenders for specific technologies, such as passengers and cargo pods. So far, engineers are facing a number of unresolved problems, such as the high energy consumption of the system, fatal risks of passengers in the case of a depressurization of the capsule or the slightest change in pressure in the tube, as well as overheating of the capsule due to the friction force that occurs during the movement. At the end of 2020, the first launch of the Hyperloop system with passengers on board took place. They were the founder of the company, Josh Geigel, and the director of passenger services, Sarah Lucian, who drove on board a 2-seat capsule XP2 500-meter test tunnel in North Las Vegas. Though during this test, capsule developed a speed of only 172 kilometers an hour, which is still very far from the ambitious plans of the founders. The company's management has repeatedly stated that Hyperloop will soon be able to reach speeds of excess of 1,000 kilometers an hour and really blur the borders of states, provided the necessary investments and a thorough solution to the technological nuances and safety issues. SpaceX, the World Wide Web, and space tourism. No matter how you look at it, but today, Elon Musk is ahead of the planet in innovation and technology, so we offer a look at another of his children, SpaceX. A fascination with science fiction literature clearly influenced Musk as a child. In fact, SpaceX is the first company to engage in rocket science on a commercial basis. In the past, space exploration and the construction of rockets and satellites for it were handled by government agencies that could afford to spend fabulous sums on research and were often bureaucratized to the point where technology was developed and refined over long years. SpaceX, in turn, as a commercial organization created with money from investors, was in a more stringent framework and simply had to act proactively and decisively. The company has come a long way since 2012 and more than once was on the verge of bankruptcy because of its unsuccessful launches, which cost millions of dollars. It is only in the last few years that literally everyone has started talking about the company, and this is due to several of its fundamental achievements. First, a great achievement was the reuse of rockets, namely the first rocket platforms, which reduced production cost many times over. Back in 2016, SpaceX managed to return the first stage of the rockets to a floating platform on the ocean and use it safely for the next launch. Recall that it is the cost of the rocket itself that is the main limiting factor for the development of space research and tourism. By the way, already in 2021, the first space expedition in the SpaceX Crew Dragon space capsule, Crew Dragon, which is put into space by Falcon 9 carrier rocket, should take place. Already at the beginning of the year, it became known that the expedition will consist of 4 people, only one of them who will be a professional astronaut, Michael Lopez Alguerra, ex-astronaut of NASA. The trip will be 8 days, 2 of which are allotted for the flight, and 6 for a stay and rest at the International Space Station. And each of the tourists will have to undergo real space training for the future flight. This expedition is currently more than expensive, about $100 million per flight. It opens great prospects for the development of commercial flights and space tourism as such. Secondly, we should not forget about another important factor of the Falcon 9 carrier rocket, which it copes with very successfully: the launch of Starlink satellites, which in total, at least 12,000 pieces should provide limitless internet access throughout the planet. To date, about 1,100 satellites have been put into orbit, which has already made it possible to launch the system in part of the United States and Canada. And in the foreseeable future, Starlink will make it possible to connect the network in the most remote corners of the planet, from high-altitude villages to the vastness of the ocean. It is nice to imagine ourselves in the future as some kind of superheroes who travel faster than the speed of sound and fly to the moon for the weekend to rest from their superhero business. But there are problems in our world that have to do with our consumer attitude toward the resources that the planet gives us. Even now, humanity is beginning to realize that it is chopping off the branch on which it is sitting, and slowly and hesitantly beginning to sort and recycle its waste. This is too little to cleanse the Earth of total pollution. More radical methods are needed. Ocean cleanup. Watching environmental documentaries, one cannot help but feel deeply saddened by the vast expanses of landfills littered with tons of garbage that is not meant to be recycled. When you see this, 2 ideas arise: either to invent a miracle machine that can break down any garbage into its smallest components for further use as raw materials, or burn everything and go live on another planet. Both are too radical and not yet feasible. But scientists are already moving in the right direction, trying to deal with this problem globally. Ocean Cleanup is a company that has stirred up the entire global community and even given great hope to all environmentalists. It was founded by 19-year-old Bojan Sleeth, who was not indifferent to ocean pollution. He designed a system in the form of U-shaped barriers with a special protective screen that sinks to a depth of 3 meters. The essence of the design is that it drifts in the ocean, collecting all the plastics, including microplastics, trash, and even abandoned fishing nets, while not harming the inhabitants of the ocean. Approximately once a month, a special ship which reads the location of the barrier on the sensors built into the system takes from it up to 2 tons of plastic debris. The system is expected to be self-sustaining by recycling the captured plastic. Its widespread use could once and for all solve the problem of ocean pollution and the preservation of many endangered animal species that are unable to survive in such conditions. Today, there is plenty of work for such a system. Take, for example, the drifting plastic island in the Pacific Ocean, roughly between Hawaii and California, which is already several times the size of France. We can only hope that such technology will only evolve, trying to keep our planet safe from ourselves. And lastly, there remains the most interesting and burning, which concerns directly to our bodies. Bioprinting. New 3D printing technologies have the potential to change medicine and the approach to our own bodies in a dramatic way. Even today, bioprinting is capable of creating internal tissues and skin for humans. According to researchers, in the next decade, printers will be able to print individual human organs and limb parts. Perhaps you and I will live to see a time when it will be easier to grow a new leg instead of fixing a broken one. Plus, organs grown for a specific person using their biomaterial will be able to take root much better. All this could noticeably reduce the list of people waiting for a transplant and noticeably prolong their lives. In addition, 3D printing opens up great prospects for plastic surgeons and cosmetologists. It is predicted that this is the area that could take the majority of the bioprinting market, rather than curing incurable diseases. It may not last forever, but this technology can make it last longer and better, especially in recent years. Great hopes for a bright future where we can be freer, healthier, and more conscious can come true thanks to the work of scientists and researchers. And that future is just around the corner.